I wasn't planning to listen. Honestly, I never thought I'd need to. That night I was just looking for music, something soft to play in the studio while my clay set. The wheel had stopped spinning. The air smelled faintly of wet earth and cinnamon tea. I was curled up in an old wool sweater scrolling absent-mindedly when her name appeared on my screen. Nora Morgan. I stared at her profile photo, her, not my girl anymore. Her smile was perfect, tilted, camera-ready, just enough makeup, just enough light, framed in gold, backed by a studio glow. Below it, the title of her latest podcast. She called it Love, but her love felt like a cage. I let out a quiet laugh, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. This wasn't the first one. Every week, a new knife. I pressed play anyway. I don't know why. Maybe I needed to hear how far she'd go this time. The episode opened with soft piano, then her voice came in clear, warm, rehearsed. The same voice I once sang lullabies to. There are adults, Nora said, who think raising you gives them the right to shape your whole story. They think you owe them, but sometimes what they call care is just another form of control. I sat up straight, then came the line that knocked the air right out of my lungs. I never called her mom. And I never felt like I was raised by one. I froze, not because it was a lie, but because she believed it. She used to call me mom all the time. She once drew a sun on our kitchen wall and scribbled in shaky letters, "Mommy, I made this for you." I left it there for 5 years, right through every paint job. Did she forget, or did she bury it? Nora kept talking, about a woman who pushed piano lessons and micromanaged every hour of my childhood. She said I never asked what I wanted, only decided, and called it sacrifice. Outside, rain tapped against the window pane. I walked over and looked out into the dark street. My reflection met me in the glass-lined face, tired eyes, silver at the temples still. A shadow of someone who used to be home to a child. She had once been everything to me, and now, I was a name erased from her bio. Maybe the truth wasn't viral enough. Maybe in the world she built, a controlling aunt was easier to sell than a mother who loved quietly, or maybe she didn't know, not really. I turned back to my work table. An old wooden box sat under some wrapping paper. I pulled it out. Inside were the drawings Nora made when she was little, a butterfly, a cracked teacup, a stick figure woman in a wide-brimmed hat labeled Aunt Elise. She always spelled my name wrong. I thought of burning them once right after she went off to college and started calling me Elise instead of Mom, but I couldn't do it. I listened to the rest of the podcast. She ended with this. I'm still learning how to live with absence, not because I didn't have a mother, but because I never had someone who truly heard me. I turned off the phone. She's wrong. I've listened to her every breath for 21 years. I gave up youth, marriage, and everything I was supposed to be to keep her safe, warm, and whole. But maybe I never said it out loud. Maybe my silence let her rewrite the story. I sat down, pulled a fresh sheet of paper from my drawer and placed it on the desk. My hand trembled just slightly. Then I began to write. I didn't know if I'd ever send it. I just knew I had to say it somewhere, somehow. You are not my niece, you are my daughter. I was 28 when I buried the truth. The day I brought Nora home from the hospital, the sky was gray and low. She was wrapped in a yellow blanket, too big for her tiny body. I remember staring at her in the backseat, her eyelids fluttering like she was already dreaming. She didn't cry, not once. I, on the other hand, cried for hours. I told everyone she was my niece, that my sister Anne had died giving birth. That I was stepping in, doing the right thing. Nobody questioned it. Anne had died 3 years earlier in a hiking accident. No one ever connected the dates. No one asked why the baby looked so much like me. It was easier that way. I didn't want pity. I didn't want headlines. I didn't want to explain how I'd gotten pregnant after being assaulted by a man I once trusted with my safety. I just wanted to give that baby a name, a home, a life that didn't begin with violence. So I lied, a clean, controlled lie, one that kept her safe. I didn't expect to live inside it for the next 2 decades. Raising her was the only thing I ever did right without hesitation. I wasn't perfect. There were times I snapped when I shouldn't have, times I worked too late and forgot to ask how her day was, but I was there, always there. When she got sick in 1st grade, I slept on the floor beside her bed for 3 nights. When she failed her first science quiz, I built an entire volcano diorama with her from scratch. When she broke her arm falling from the swing, I read to her every night until the cast came off. She called me Mom when she was 4. She stopped when she turned 12. At first I thought it was just a phase, preteen mood swings, new friends, boundary testing, but it wasn't a phase, it was a slow erosion. One day she came home from school and asked, "Why don't I have any baby pictures with my real mom?" I froze. "I lost them," I said quickly, "in a move years ago." She stared at me for a long time, then just nodded. That was the first time I realized she suspected something, but she never pushed and I never offered more. The silence between us began then. It stretched across birthdays and Christmases, across college applications and teary goodbyes. But she still hugged me, she still came home on holidays until 2 years ago when the podcast started. It began small, just a handful of followers, a few posts about healing from hidden pain. She mentioned me only vaguely, the adult in my life, the woman who raised me. I thought it was therapeutic, maybe even brave. Then came the stories. He told me I was a burden. She said I owed her. She made me feel like love had strings attached. I didn't recognize myself in any of them, and still I stayed quiet. I told myself she's processing, it's not about me, it's creative license. But last week, Nora posted a new episode with a picture of me taken from a local article about my art studio. Cropped, filtered, but unmistakable. And then the title below it. "This is the woman who taught me silence is safer than truth." I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the dark with a folder on my lap. Inside were documents I never meant to show anyone. Nora's birth certificate with my name in the mother field. The original hospital form I signed alone. The police report I never followed through on. The medical bills I paid under a fake name. The whole ugly, sacred truth. And suddenly, I couldn't breathe under the weight of it anymore. Maybe I had protected her for too long. Maybe my silence had given her the space to create a villain out of me. The next morning, I called my lawyer. Hypothetically, I asked if I wanted to change legal guardianship records or at least open a conversation about parentage. Would that reopen anything? There was a pause, then she answered carefully, "Yes. But it depends what you're trying to fix or reveal." I didn't reply because I wasn't sure yet. I just knew something had shifted. I had let her tell the story long enough. Maybe it was time she heard mine. The studio had always been my sanctuary. It smelled of earth and heat and something unexplainably alive. I used to think if I could keep shaping beauty from clay, I could keep the rest of my life from falling apart. But that morning, even the wheel felt different. My hands moved out of habit, smoothing, spinning, pressing, yet I kept losing the shape. The lip of the bowl collapsed. The base buckled. The clay cracked in my palm as if it knew something inside me had changed. I wiped my hands on my apron and reached for my phone. Nora had posted again, not a podcast this time, a reel, just 10 seconds. A soft focus shot of her sitting on the edge of her bed, face turned toward the window, tears suspended perfectly on her cheeks. The caption read, "Some scars don't show, especially the ones left by family." There was a quote layered over it in her handwriting, "You don't get to call it love when you controlled every part of me." The comment section was brutal. "She's so strong for speaking out. I relate to this more than I should." My mom was the same, silent but suffocating. My name wasn't mentioned, but my face was right there, on her page. My features, my shadow, my legacy reduced to mood lighting for a pity post. I should have been furious. But all I felt was hollow until I noticed something. Near the bottom, one comment stood out. Wait, didn't she say in her older episode that her aunt was her legal guardian, but in the college Q&A she called her mom? I clicked the profile. It belonged to a woman named Sandra, a therapist based in Denver. She followed both of us. Another comment popped up a minute later, "Not trying to judge, but I've been listening since the beginning." Some of the timeline doesn't add up anymore. The first crack, it was small, but I saw it, and I knew it wouldn't take much to let the rest fall apart, but I didn't want revenge, I just wanted the truth to breathe. That night, I took the old box down from the top shelf in the linen closet. The one with Nora's early sketches, report cards, her first set of watercolor paints. The letter she wrote me when she was 9. "You're not just my aunt, you're my safe place." I laid it all out on the studio table. One by one, then I picked up my camera, not for a reel, not for drama. I recorded myself gently unfolding each memory, no voiceover. No background music, just paper and breath and hands that never stopped loving her. I titled the video, "The Things She Forgot." I didn't post it yet, not then, not because I was afraid, but because I wanted her to see it first. The next morning I texted her, "I'd like to meet, just talk, no judgment, I have something to tell you." It took her 6 hours to respond. Why now? Because the silence between us is louder than anything you've said. Another hour passed, then okay, 1 hour, no cameras, no drama. She picked the place, a tea shop downtown, small and overpriced, the kind with ceramic cups and velvet chairs and soft jazz floating from invisible speakers. I arrived 10 minutes early. She walked in exactly on time, dressed in beige layers, hair perfect, eyes tired behind practiced eyeliner. She didn't hug me, she just sat, folded her arms and said, "So what do you want?" I studied her. Up close, the armor looked heavy, her voice was calm, but her fingers trembled slightly as she reached for her mug. I took a deep breath. My palms were sweating. I'd waited 23 years for this. "You think I raised you out of obligation," I began. "You think I was never fully in." She looked at me like she was already bored. "Elise, I didn't come here to rehash your version of parenting." I shook my head. "No, you didn't. But you're about to hear something you've never heard before." She blinked. "You're not my niece, Nora. You're my daughter." The mug in her hand froze midair. She didn't say anything, didn't move. Just stared at me like I'd spoken in another language. "What?" she whispered. I repeated it, slower. "You are my daughter." And then I told her everything, not the long version, just enough for her to understand: the assault, the secrecy. The decision to raise her under a lie so she could grow up without shame clinging to her name. Her face lost all color. "You lied to me." Her voice was quiet, barely a breath. "Yes. You let me hate you all this time, thinking you were just some bitter aunt, and you were my mother." I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "I let you tell your version of our story because I thought that was what healing looked like. But silence isn't the same as permission." She stood up, abruptly, too fast. Her chair scraped loudly across the tile. "This is insane," she muttered, shaking her head. "This is manipulative. You're only telling me this now because you want to win." I looked up at her, calm. "No, Nora, I'm telling you this because I can't carry your silence anymore." She didn't respond, she just left, didn't pay for her tea, didn't look back, but I knew. That was the beginning, not of forgiveness, but of fracture, and once something cracks, it never fits quite the same again. 3 days passed. No messages, no calls, no typing bubbles, nothing, but I knew she'd heard me, and I knew she was thinking, spinning, maybe even regretting. Not the hate, not yet. Regret needs truth, and she hadn't let that in, not fully. I didn't push. I'd said what I needed to say. After 23 years, I had finally peeled back the silence with something louder than pain: honesty. But the silence that followed wasn't empty, it was planning something. On the 4th day, I found out what. It was a link, sent to me by Olivia, a former student of mine who still followed Nora's content. "You might want to see this." I clicked. The thumbnail stopped my breath. Nora's face, serious, raw, eyes swollen from crying, filled the frame. Her title bar flashed bold in soft beige: "The woman who lied to me my whole life." I didn't blink, I just hit play. She didn't say my name, but she didn't need to. "I always suspected something was off," she began. "I just didn't realize the full extent until this week." She took a shaky breath, perfectly timed. She told me she was my aunt. That she'd raised me after my mother died. She said it with so much conviction, I never questioned it. A pause, a sip of tea, a long, steadying breath. But she lied. She wasn't my aunt, she was more than that, and she kept it from me. My entire identity, stolen and rewritten to fit her narrative. I could hear my heart thudding in my ears. She kept going. She said I'd made her a storybook project, a silent legacy that didn't leave room for her own truth. She told the audience she wasn't angry, just lost, just trying to make sense of the betrayal. I almost laughed. She made herself the victim of my silence and the hero of her awakening. It was a perfect pivot, soft-spoken, tragic. Marketable, and it worked. The comments came in fast. "She's so brave for sharing this. I can't imagine being lied to like that. This explains so much about her earlier episodes." One even read, "This is why women should never be forced into motherhood they didn't choose. She probably resented you." I closed the tab, my fingers were ice, my jaw ached from how tightly I'd been clenching it. She didn't tell them about the art shows I skipped to stay home when she had the flu. She didn't mention the time I sold my favorite vase just to pay for her field trip to the coast. She forgot to say I was there when no one else was. But truth doesn't trend, victimhood does. Later that evening I called my lawyer again. "Remember what I asked before?" I said quietly. "Yes," she replied. "Do you want to move forward?" I paused, then yes. "And I want a copy of every legal document confirming my guardianship, every signature, every court file, and I want them ready in print and digital." She didn't ask why, she knew. By the time I hung up, I had a new folder on my desktop, her real story, not for the public, not yet, but I needed it, because she wasn't done. 2 nights later she went live, not a soft podcast, a full stream. Makeup-free, dim lighting, curled up in her favorite sweatshirt, the one I gave her on her 17th birthday. She looked just broken enough. She said she was still processing what she'd learned. She didn't call me cruel. She didn't need to, she let the silence speak for her. "It's weird how people can love you and still lie to you," she said softly. "You start to question if anything was ever real." Comments lit up like fireflies. But then something happened. A single comment broke through. "Didn't you once say she was the only one who ever stayed?" Then another, "There's an old post from 2021 where you thanked her for raising you. Why delete that now?" Nora froze for a second, just a flicker, but it was there, a glitch in the performance. She recovered quickly, smiled sadly, said she used to believe in the version of love she was given. But I saw it, a crack. And if there's one thing I know after years at the wheel, it's that once clay splits, no amount of glaze will make it whole again. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the studio staring at the kiln, the fire inside low and glowing. She wanted a story, so did I. She wanted the public to see me. I would show them, but not in a live stream, not in a post, in a gallery, one they couldn't scroll past. It started with a table. An old pine slab with nicks from years of failed pottery, fingerprints baked into every groove, clay dust permanently caught in the corners. I'd had it since Nora was a toddler. She once spilled juice across it while painting her family of trees. I remember how she cried, afraid she'd ruined it. I told her, "Every mark makes it more yours." Now it was mine again, and it was where I laid everything out. The letter she wrote when she was 6, misspelled and smudged, ending with, "I hope you don't get too old, Mommy, because I need you forever." A photo of us at the pumpkin patch, her cheeks covered in cinnamon sugar, arms wrapped around my leg. The art award she received in middle school, the one I framed and kept above my desk even after she said it was just a phase. There were school newsletters with my name handwritten in the emergency contact line. Receipts from music lessons, a scan of her dental insurance card signed by me, a list of medications I kept taped to the fridge every winter because she got bronchitis like clockwork. These weren't things people curated. They were the kind we carried without question. The kind we gave our lives to without ever needing applause, but now maybe they needed a stage. I called in a few favors. 2 weeks later, I had a small space at a gallery just off Alberta Street. They usually hosted pop-ups for indie sculptors or emerging photographers, but I wasn't pitching art. I pitched a story. One-sided narratives are dangerous, I told them. This is the other side. The woman in charge, Tanya, just looked at me and said, "We need more of that." I titled the installation, Unspoken, a Record of Love Unreturned. It wasn't loud, it wasn't angry, it didn't name Nora once, but every piece said what I had held back for decades. Each station had a word: trust, care, silence, sacrifice, mother, and under each, a single object paired with a caption. A cracked mug I kept from when she made me breakfast in 2008. Caption, "You called me Mom for the last time that year." A voicemail recording looped silently on a screen, showing her missed calls after her first breakup. Caption, "I stayed on the phone with you for 4 hours, you never mentioned it again." Her old ballet shoes. Caption, "You said I forced this, but you asked for the pink ones. I didn't expect attention." But Portland had a way of finding meaning in things. A few gallery goers posted snippets on social media, nothing dramatic, just quiet awe, a thread titled, "This woman made an art show out of raising her daughter, and it hurts." Went viral overnight. I didn't check the numbers, I didn't reply to comments, but I knew Nora had seen it. 2 days later, a journalist reached out from a small digital magazine, Women and Words. She asked if I was willing to be interviewed. "No," I said, but I gave her permission to quote the pieces. That same night Nora posted again. Her tone was different. She didn't deny anything this time. She didn't cry, she said. Sometimes people present their version of history with more elegance than truth. Don't be fooled by pretty frames. And that was it, just enough shade to discredit me, just enough vagueness to remain the wounded party. Something about her voice was thinner now. Maybe because she realized you can control a story online. But not in a room where people stand in front of your baby shoes and whisper, "Oh my God." I didn't fight her post, I didn't need to. Instead, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went into the kiln room, lit a fresh fire, and threw a new pot. No plan, no sketch, just hands and clay and breath. It felt like breathing underwater. When it was done, I carved something into the base before it dried. 2 words, "Still here." That weekend, I returned to the gallery just after closing. Tanya had left a small note by the register. People stood in front of the letter for 20 minutes without saying a word. I walked to the back wall, the last piece, a folded drawing of a little girl holding the hand of a tall woman in a wide-brimmed hat. The caption beneath it read, "She called me Aunt Elise." I never corrected her, but every line of her life I held. And that's when I saw it. Someone had left a note on the floor beneath the frame, a torn scrap of paper in familiar handwriting. "You remembered more than I thought." No name, no return address, just one quiet sentence, but I knew it was hers. The first thing she'd said to me that wasn't broadcast, the first thing she gave me off camera. It wasn't apology. But it wasn't deflection either, it was something else. Maybe the beginning of seeing, maybe the end of pretending. I didn't hear from her for a while after that. Weeks passed, the exhibit ran its course. The pieces were packed into boxes, the lights dimmed, the space returned to blank white walls. But the silence that followed, it wasn't heavy like before, it felt intentional. Like someone finally holding their breath, not to survive, but to think. Then one Thursday morning, while I was shaping a bowl with soft edges and uneven ribs, my phone buzzed. Unknown number, not spam, not saved. Just a number I didn't recognize, and somehow I knew. I stared at the screen for 2 rings, then 3. On the 4th, I picked up. "Hello." Pause, then her voice thin, hesitant, like she was speaking through fog. "It's me." I didn't say anything, not yet. "I don't have a speech or anything," she added. "I'm not calling for drama." Still, I stayed quiet. A sigh. "I've been thinking about everything, the exhibit, what you said, what I said." I let the silence hang, not cruel, just open. "I keep going over it in my head," she continued. "I don't know what's true anymore. I remember some of those things, but I also remember feeling alone, confused. Like you were always there, but never really with me." I closed my eyes. She wasn't trying to fight, she was trying to untangle something. "I guess what I'm trying to say is," she faltered, "I don't know what I feel. But I'm not ready to hate you either." That was her version of peace. No apology, no ownership, just the space between hate and understanding, a breath of something not yet formed. I didn't offer comfort. I didn't rush in with forgiveness. I just said, "Thank you for calling." She exhaled like she'd been holding it for hours. After a beat, she added, "There's something else." I waited. "I've been thinking about taking time offline, maybe traveling. Maybe just disconnecting for a while. I don't know what's real anymore when everything I feel becomes content." That part I believed. Her voice cracked slightly when she said it. "You don't have to explain," I said quietly. "I know," she said. "I just wanted you to know I'm trying." Then, like she didn't want to risk softness, she added quickly, "But I'm not ready to talk about everything else. Not yet." "That's okay," I said. "We don't have to talk about everything." She paused. "I never asked," she said suddenly. About the beginning, about who." "You don't have to," I interrupted, gently but firm. There was silence. I think she expected me to tell her anyway, to unburden the rest, but not every truth needs to be handed off. Some things can remain unsaid until someone is really ready to hold them. "I'll call you again," she said. I didn't ask when. We said goodbye, no affection, no title, just 2 women who once shared a life, now trying to share air. After the call, I sat with the clay bowl still spinning in my hands. It was lopsided, soft, imperfect, but real. I didn't fix it, I let it dry exactly as it was. Later that night, I wrote a letter, not to her, to myself. A mother is not a shape she fits into. A mother is the shape she leaves behind. I didn't raise her to thank me. I raised her to stand, even if it meant walking away from me. I folded the letter and placed it in the same wooden box as the others. That would be my last piece for now, not for her, for me. She went offline 2 days later. No dramatic farewell post, no emotional goodbye video, just disappeared. Her accounts went dark. All her scheduled content vanished. No updates, no captions, no curated vulnerability. And for a moment, the world stopped watching her. That silence, it was louder than any podcast she'd ever released. People speculated, she's rebranding. She got canceled. Maybe she finally snapped. But I didn't speculate, I knew. This wasn't a strategy, it was surrender. Quiet, confused, necessary surrender. I told no one, not even Tanya, who texted asking if I'd seen it. I didn't reply. I went on with my days. The kiln kept burning, the orders kept coming. I taught my Thursday night class like always, pausing only once when a student asked, "Do you ever make things just for yourself anymore?" I blinked at her, then I said, "I'm trying to remember how." And I was. One slow morning, while unpacking a new shipment of glaze, I received a call from a name I hadn't heard in years. Miriam, Nora's high school art teacher. "Elise?" she asked, voice soft, cautious. "Yes." "I saw your exhibit," she said. "A friend shared it with me." My breath caught. "I always wondered," she continued. She was such a bright kid, but something shifted her senior year. She stopped drawing, started pulling away from everyone. I didn't know what happened. I didn't either, I admitted. I just tried to hold the pieces. She was quiet for a while, then she told us, "Once you made her choose between her art and your expectations." I felt my chest tighten. I started but stopped myself. It didn't matter now. What mattered was the trail left behind. The versions of me she'd carved into others. She asked me to write her a college rec letter that year, Miriam said. "She told me not to mention you." "Of course she did. Why are you telling me this now?" I asked gently. "Because," she said, "I want you to know some of us are starting to see it differently, especially now." Her voice softened. She was hurting, but that doesn't mean you weren't loving her. I swallowed hard. "Thank you." After we hung up, I sat in the studio for a long time, staring at a half-glazed bowl. And then I did something I hadn't done since Nora was 12. I opened a new notebook, wrote at the top, "Would I remember that she forgot?" It wasn't for her, not directly, it was for me. For the mother who still existed beneath all her erasures. I wrote about how she used to crawl into my bed after thunderstorms, how she hated raisins but pretended to like them if I'd already packed them in her lunch. How when she had chickenpox she let me rub calamine lotion on her back and whispered, "You have magic hands." I wrote about the last birthday card she ever gave me, the one with a note that said, "Thank you for being the kind of mother I didn't know I needed." She was 17. 4 months later the podcast began. That memory split me in half. It still does, but remembering is a form of reclamation. And slowly I was taking pieces back. One morning I opened the studio door and found a package on the steps. No sender name, just my address written in familiar, uneven script. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, was a sketchbook. The same one she used in her first college semester. She had once said it was filled with half-finished ideas. I hadn't seen it in years. There was no note, no explanation, just one drawing taped to the inside cover. A woman in a clay-splattered apron sitting on a stool, her hands folded in her lap. She was turned slightly away, face unseen, but the posture, it was unmistakable, and below it scribbled faintly in pencil. "Still trying to see you clearly." My throat tightened. It wasn't an apology, it wasn't forgiveness, it was something rarer, an attempt, and in this story that was everything. Spring came slowly that year. In Portland, it always does, first with stubborn rain, then with soft bursts of color that show up like they forgot to ask permission. My garden bloomed late, the daffodils took their time, the lavender never quite opened, but I didn't mind. Some things need space before they unfold. I hadn't heard from Nora since the sketchbook. No text, no call, just that quiet offering left at my door. It was the kind of gesture that didn't want a reply, just room, just breath. Just time, and I gave it to her. 1 month passed, then another. Then one evening I got a message, not from her, from Jenna. I hadn't seen her since college move-in day when she helped Nora lug 3 boxes of records and a cactus up the stairs to her dorm room. Her name lit up my screen like a ghost from a calmer time. "I hope it's okay that I'm reaching out. I thought you should know Nora's been talking about coming back to Portland." I read it twice, then again. She's not asking for anything, Jenna added quickly. I think she just doesn't know how to come home without turning it into content. I didn't respond right away. I stepped outside instead. The garden was quiet, damp earth. Faint jasmine, a single bird watching me from the fence post like it knew I was waiting for something too. I thought about all the years I spent giving her things she never asked for, shoes she'd never wear, books she'd never read. My last name never spoken, and now all she wanted was space, so I gave her that too. 4 days later she showed up at the studio. She didn't knock. She just stood in the doorway, taller than I remembered, paler too. She wore a gray hoodie and old jeans, no camera, no ring light, no carefully worded caption floating above her head, just Nora, or maybe not quite. Someone in between. I looked up from the table but didn't stand. She walked in slowly, fingers grazing the shelves like she was remembering something through her skin. You haven't changed anything, she said, glancing around. I did, I said softly, you just never noticed. Her eyes flicked toward me, then away. I didn't come to make anything dramatic, she said quickly. I'm not here to cry or confess or whatever you're expecting. I'm not expecting anything. She exhaled, good. I gestured to the chair across from me. She didn't sit. She looked at the wheel, then the drying rack, then the kiln in the back. Sometimes I dream about this place, she said, almost to herself, but it's not mine anymore. It never had to be. She flinched like I'd struck her. I didn't mean it to hurt. But truth, even gentle, has a sharpness when it touches old wounds. After a pause, she reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope, unsealed. She slid it across the table. I wrote this before I came, she said. But I'm not sure I want you to read it. I looked down, didn't touch it. You don't have to explain, I said, I know. Her voice cracked on that. She stepped back, suddenly unsteady. I thought I needed the whole world to understand, she whispered, that if enough strangers believed me, it would make my pain real. It was real, I said quietly, even if it wasn't the whole truth. She looked up finally. Her eyes weren't angry this time. They weren't guarded or glazed over with performance. They were scared and human, and something else, something I hadn't seen since she was little and clinging to my hand in the grocery store. Hope. I thought I was telling my story, she said, but all I did was hide in it. My throat burned. She took a breath. I can't take it back, any of it, I know that, and I don't expect you to pretend it didn't happen. I didn't speak. She waited for my judgment. It never came. Then, with a trembling voice, she added, but I would like to know who I was before the stories, the real ones, if you're willing to tell me. I finally reached for the envelope, not to open it, just to hold it, and I nodded. Come back tomorrow, I said. She blinked. Tomorrow. I'll make tea, you bring questions, no cameras, no filters. She nodded slowly. As she turned to leave, I said one more thing, Nora. She paused at the door. I can't rewrite the past, I told her, but I'm willing to tell you everything I never said if you're really ready to hear it. She didn't smile, but her shoulders eased. And for the first time in a long, long while. She didn't walk away angry. She walked away different, like maybe, just maybe, she had finally stepped out of her own shadow. She showed up the next afternoon at exactly 2 p.m. No fanfare, no small talk, just Nora holding a small leather notebook and 2 pens. I had the kettle ready and a plate of ginger cookies between us. She sat across the table and looked around the room like it still didn't feel real to be there without having to defend herself. We didn't start with the big things. I didn't bring up the podcast. She didn't ask about the birth certificate. Instead, she pointed to a cracked pot on the top shelf. That one, she said, you always kept it even though it's useless. It's not useless, I replied. It holds what I never finished. She scribbled something down in her notebook. I didn't ask what. I told her about the year I almost lost the studio because I'd spent every dime paying for her braces. I told her how I once walked 3 miles in a thunderstorm to get her antibiotics because she wouldn't stop crying and the pharmacy delivery was late. She was quiet through most of it, but she was listening. I could see that now. When she finally spoke, it wasn't what I expected. I always thought you were distant on purpose, she said, like you were keeping something back to punish me. I was keeping myself from unraveling. Her eyes met mine, not defensive. Just curious, why didn't you ever tell me the truth? I was afraid you'd see yourself through my pain instead of my love. That stopped her. She wrote that down too. We talked for 2 hours, then 3. She asked about the man who hurt me. I didn't tell her his name. I told her what mattered, that it wasn't her fault, that none of it changed how wanted she was. Her face tightened. She didn't cry, she didn't flinch, she just sat with it. And that more than any apology was enough. Later, as the light in the studio turned golden, she closed the notebook. Can I ask one more thing? Of course. Do you think I ruined everything? I took a long breath. Then I said, you hurt me, Nora, deeply. You turned me into a ghost when I was the one who never left. She nodded, eyes shining. But no, I added, you didn't ruin everything. Why not? Because you came back. She looked away. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know. I just want to try again, without the script, without the story. I smiled softly. Then come tomorrow, bring nothing, we'll just sit. She hesitated. You really want that? I do. But only if you come as you, not the version people follow. She exhaled, shaky but sincere. I don't know who that is yet. Then let's find out together. Before she left, she placed the notebook on the table. For you, she said. I thought it was for you. It was, but I think I need to start a new one. She paused at the door. Does this mean we're okay? I shook my head. No, it means we're trying, and trying is sacred. She held my gaze. That's enough for me. Then she left. No dramatic hug, no swelling music, just the sound of the door clicking shut. I opened the notebook slowly. Page after page, scribbled observations, half thoughts, fragmented questions. Did I ever say thank you? Why do I remember her hands more than her words? Did I make her small so I could grow bigger? Can a mother love even when she's not allowed to be one? I closed the book. And I cried, not because I was broken, but because something inside me had started to mend. That night, I lit the kiln again, and I wrote on the new clay with steady fingers. Some things take longer to shape. We didn't fix everything. That's not how healing works. But she came back the next day, and the one after that. No cameras, no filters, no questions she wasn't ready for, just her sitting across from me drinking tea slowly like she was afraid the moment might vanish if she moved too fast. Some days we didn't speak at all, we just worked side by side, she with her notebook, me with clay. The silence didn't feel sharp anymore. It felt full, like a quiet room where something sacred was happening. She started asking smaller questions. What did I look like when I was born? Did I cry a lot? What was the first word I ever said? She never asked about the man, and I never offered. That silence, I think, was a gift we gave each other. One afternoon, she found an old photo of herself at 8, holding up a lopsided vase she'd made. Her handwriting scrawled in the corner, for Mommy, because you fix broken things. She stared at it for a long time, then whispered, I don't remember writing that. I nodded. Doesn't mean it wasn't true. We didn't need long speeches, we just needed moments like that, honest, quiet recognitions of what was, not just what hurt. And slowly, that became enough. A few weeks later, she asked if she could help with a community workshop. I watched her kneel beside a child with sticky fingers and wide eyes, showing her how to smooth the edge of a cup. Her voice was gentle. Focused, she didn't say much, but she stayed the whole session. That night, while cleaning up, she turned to me and said, I don't know how to be your daughter yet, but I want to learn. I set down the tools, looked at her. I don't need you to be anything but here. She nodded. No tears, no declarations, just presence. And that's when I knew this wasn't about returning to what we had. It was about building something new from pieces, from truth. From the kind of love that survives being shattered. One evening, long after the sun went down, she asked if I'd ever kept the letter I started writing after the first podcast. I smiled faintly. I never sent it. Can I read it? I hesitated, then walked to the drawer, pulled out the envelope and handed it over. She opened it slowly, like it might break. Her eyes moved across the words. Her fingers trembled at the last line, You are not my niece. You are my daughter. Her breath caught. I don't know if I deserve that. You don't have to deserve it, I said. You just have to accept it. She folded the paper, gently, then leaned forward, resting her forehead on the table's edge. I spent years shouting over you, she whispered, telling the world what you weren't. I reached across the table and touched her hand. And now you're learning who I was. We sat there for a long time, fingers barely touching, like the start of a bridge. Later, she asked if she could keep the letter. I said yes. The next morning, I woke early and made a new pot. It was soft, uneven. I didn't trim it into perfection. I left the ridges from my fingers. At the base, I carved 4 words. She came back whole. I placed it on the windowsill where the morning light could find it. not everything would be fixed, but we were standing in the middle of something honest. And maybe that's what forgiveness really looks like, not a perfect ending, but a soft beginning. Not a loud reunion, but a quiet return. One morning at breakfast, she said something I'll never forget. "I used to think being believed was the most important thing," she said. "Now I think being known is even better." I smiled. "And who are you now?" She looked up, eyes clearer than I'd seen in years. "I'm someone trying to tell the truth out loud, this time for real." Then she added, with a voice I hadn't heard in a long, long time, "Mom, just once, just enough."